He-Man is one of those archetypal male hero characters from the 80s, which has somehow stood some of the test of time, thanks to a few reboots, a bunch of toys, and a classic haircut as well. Nobody can argue with the blonde bowl cut. There are discussions about whether or not he impacted male self-image. That's a whole other video I'm not going to do on this channel. But the main thing is that with a brand new film out now and a new actor portraying him, it's a fun time to consider how you would play He-Man in D&D, and it's not as simple as you'd think. So I've decided to take that upon myself and put together a build for him in D&D using a bunch of really cool third-party subclasses, which I think fit perfectly. But I would think that it is my build, and I'm generally pretty happy with my work. So today we're gonna show that off. Before we do that, who is He-Man? Well, He-Man is this dude, you know, big old dude. Like I said, silly haircut. He's a bikini armor wearing prince turned superhero thanks to a magical sword and the power of Grayskull. He's also in a few memes and is effectively a magical girl when you think about it. He has a catchphrase, he transforms, and I'm pretty sure there's a transformation animation as well. A mighty warrior and relies just as much on his charm and leadership talents to overcome problems as he does his brute strength. How do you represent all of that in D&D? Well, the answer is a lot of multi-classing. So let's get into it. The first thing is the background. At least that's where I always start my builds. And we are going with a noble background because he's a prince. So he's noble, logically, right? And it also gives us a bunch of really cool stuff. Not only do we get history? Why did my mouth do that? Not only do you get history and persuasion skill proficiencies, you also get a tool of your choice. I've gone for darts. Darts are a tool. Sure. You also get the skilled feat, where I've taken athletics, intimidation, and animal handling. So we are kicking off with a lot of proficiencies, which is very good. And we also get access to a strength, intelligence, or charisma buff. So I have put +1 charisma and +2 strength. If you can customize this, it's worth considering putting the charisma into con, but it really depends how you want to build it and what your focuses want to be. We are, of course, a human. Humans are... well, he's a human, so it makes sense. And humans, unlike in the olden days of D&D, are just really, really good now. We're going to be medium, because He-Man is not a little dude. I've taken acrobatics as our skill of choice. And for our origin feat, the extra one, I've taken tough, because more health is more good. For the stat spread to begin with, we're going to start off with a 17 in strength, a 12 in dex, 14 con, 8 intelligence, 8 wisdom, and 15 charisma. I do think there's a very heavy argument, like I said, for putting that charisma probably just down at 13 and keeping it there. We do need it at 13 for multi-classing later on, and bumping your con up instead. But this is the build I went with, and I'm pretty happy with how it goes, so let's get to the build. As you can see here, we will eventually be taking levels in a few things, but we're kicking off with 5 levels in Barbarian. Our first level in Barbarian nets us another 2 skill proficiencies, putting us, I think, at 9 different skill proficiencies at level 1. I might be off. I usually am. That's not true. I'm okay at this. Oh, that was underselling it. Along with the nature and perception boosts, we get rage, which allows us to, a couple of times a day, enter into a rage to gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, add a little bit of damage to our strength attacks. It's only 2, unfortunately. Give us advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, which feels very thematic. It does stop us maintaining concentration or casting spells, but that's not the end of the world. And it lasts until the end of next turn, unless you use a bonus action, or you hit something, or you get hit. It's a whole thing, basically. We also get unarmored defense, which does feel incredibly important for this build, because he wears bikini armor. So unless you're getting the bikini armor of +1 defense, you're kind of stuck with a low AC. There's another reason to go for Barbarian. Our AC isn't going to be great to begin with. It's really not great at all. But hey, we're going to get hit. You're just going to have to accept that. That's why we took tough. Weapon masteries. I've gone for the longsword because I feel like the power sword is a longsword, and the battle axe because originally he didn't have his power sword. He had a battle axe. So actually you can kick this off with topple as your weapon mastery of choice, and you can also use a shield with both of these, which means you can boost your defense up a little bit more if you want a more tactical feel to the whole thing. Either way, they're both one-handed weapons, theoretically, although obviously the longsword has versatile if we do want to do extra damage, which we probably do. At level 2, we are going to be Barbarian 2. We're going to get Danger Sense, which gives us advantage on our dex saving throws the vast majority of the time. And we also get Reckless Attack, which allows us to attack with advantage, but also attack rolls coming against us will have advantage as well, but that's fine because we have resistance to stuff, is the logic there. Level 3 is where things get really fun, I think, for this build, because we are taking a Grim Hollow subclass, specifically the Path of the Primal Spirit. This reads, many barbarians are in tune with the natural world, but few are as mystically intertwined with it as those who walk the path of the primal spirit. These barbarians forge powerful connections with beasts and nature spirits, inspiring such ethereal beings to manifest and journey on far-flung adventures. Barbarians who follow this path have a deep reverence for the cycle of the natural world, and such barbarians are likely to accept pleas from aid from local wildlife as they are from people. This respect for animals and spirits doesn't cross into naivety. Few understand the delicate balance between the needs of predator and prey more than those that have walked the path of the primal spirit. The reason we are going for this subclass is because it gets us access to a pet. We can make the pet take any form we want, and we can also have the pet be large if we take the Guardian variant of it, which I'll cover in a second. This pet can be Battle Cat, which is, I think, an integral part of He-Man's character, because it's a big old green cat. We get primal knowledge here as well, so we're going to take survival as our skill of choice here. This bumps us up to 9. We had 8 previously. And then we have our primal companion, which is always with us all the time. When we rage, it gets a little bit of a bonus, which is super cool. You share your rage with it, so it gets resistance to damage types as well. But most of the time, it's just a big old cat. We are going for the primal guardian, not the primal striker. The striker does more damage, unsurprisingly, and can give you advantage on attacks. The Guardian can help you defend yourself by taking damage instead of you while still having resistance. It also gets the ability to gain temp health equal to half of its maximum HP and becomes enraged, which gives creatures disadvantage against creatures other than the Guardian, which is cool if they're within 5 feet of the Guardian. It also stops it being surprised, and it has a relatively decent chance to hit, but not great damage. It does 1d4 plus 2 plus 2, which is an average of 6.5, which isn't great. But it's not there for that. It's there because it has a 30-foot walk speed and it's large, which means that we can ride on it. And as a controlled mount, it can take the dash action, which means it has 60 feet of movement, which is lovely. Not that you should always be riding on it, but that if that's the path that you'd like to take, then you can do that. I'll go into that a little bit more later. At level 4, we get another weapon mastery. I've gone for Graze in case you want to flavour your power sword as a greatsword. Graze is always good. The greatsword is also always good, so it's not a bad thing to go for. And for our feat, I've gone for Iron Hero because I can't think of anything more fitting for He-Man than Iron Hero. This gives you a boost to your strength or dex of 1, letting us boost our strength up to 18, thereby increasing our chance to hit and our damage, which is always nice. It also gives us an AC boost if a creature has a higher CR than our level when it attacks us. It gives an advantage on any attacks against a creature that's reduced one of your allies to 0 hit points since the end of your last turn. That can include Battle Cat, which is cool. And it also lets us intercede in legendary actions, although, as I always say, make sure you talk to your DM about the limitations this needs to have, because while it has a limited number of uses, it does not have a limited range, which is very silly. At level 5, we are taking our final level of Barbarian. We're taking Barbarian 5, which lets us attack twice instead of once, and also gives us a little bit of a movement speed buff. We can move faster than the Battle Cat can, assuming it's not dashing, but because as a controlled mount it can dash, that shouldn't be an issue. Also leads us to our first damage check-in, and it's worth noting that Reckless Attack here does such a huge job for our overall damage output because advantage on attacks makes them more consistent, unsurprisingly. So with against an enemy AC of 15, you have an average damage of 25.61, which is solid for a barbarian. Despite how they seem, I do think barbarians are better tanks than they are damage dealers, at least with most classes. Speaking of being a tank, not only does tough and our con and our hit die in general mean we've got a HP of 60, but we've also got more than that thanks to our Battle Cat being able to interact with us and protect us, and also, of course, the resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, all of which is very, very good stuff. Before I move on to the next part of the build, I just want to give a quick shout out to my channel members and my Patreon members too. I really appreciate all of you. You don't need to give me money, but it means a lot that you do. If you would like to join us, you're welcome to do so. You get access to a little special area in the Discord. You can access the Discord anyway. There will be a link in the description. And if you go for one of the higher tiers in the Patreon, I start doing reviews and stuff. And I'm doing campaign diaries and all sorts of good stuff as part of the Patreon, whether you are a free or a paid member. So it's not a bad deal proposition, given that you can get it all for free. I'm bad at monetizing myself, okay? At least on YouTube. Anyway, from level 6, we are going Warlock. Ultimately, He-Man gets a lot of his power in the most recent iterations from the sword, which to me screams Hexblade Warlock. Hexblade is not in 5.5e as of yet, but Pact of the Blade exists, which gives us a lot more flexibility. We're not going to be attacking with our charisma at any point. I don't think that fits the vibe that He-Man has of being an absolute himbo, so I really don't want to do that, but it's a nice option to have if you do want to absolutely min-max this. Although if that's the case, you should probably take level in Warlock to start off with so you have Pact of the Blade, but it is worth noting that you will not get the rage damage bonus or reckless attack either, I believe, if you are using charisma to attack. However, we do still want to take Pact of the Blade, and that will be our first Eldritch Invocation because it lets us bond with a weapon so we can summon it and we can use it as a spellcasting focus. While we're not going to be doing a huge amount of spellcasting, it's nice to have options to things to use when you're not in rage. Eldritch Blast is obviously a good one, although our hit chance isn't fantastic for it, but Prestidigitation is nice if you want to do things like keep your hair shiny and clean, which is integral to the He-Man brand. One spell I would recommend taking is Armour of Agathis. This gives you 5 temp health. It scales up quite well as you level up as well, because you always have to cast your spells at the highest slot because of how Warlock Pact slots work. And if a creature hits you before the spell ends, the creature takes 5 cold damage. There is no concentration on this, and it lasts for an hour, so it's not unreasonable to have this active as you go into combat, which is great. Plus, with our damage resistances, it's pretty reasonable to treat that 5 temp health like 10 temp health a lot of the time, certainly at early levels, meaning that it stretches that little bit further, which is wonderful. Oh, one last thing on Pact of the Blade as well. Along with being able to theoretically use our charisma modifier, like I said, we're not going to do that, you can also choose your weapon to deal necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage instead of its normal damage type if you would like to, which can be good against really specific creatures. It's just nice to have the option. It's also a really cool visual. Level 7, we're going to be a Warlock 2. We get another Eldritch Invocation. We actually get 2 here. I'm going to recommend Fiendish Vigor. This lets us just give ourselves temp health. We can do Armour of Agathis first, and then do Fiendish Vigor to get a max temp health on that, which is 12 temp, which is basically 24 temp, making us even tankier. And we can also take lessons of the first ones to give ourselves the Blessing of Wotan, which is another name for Odin, and while I know that He-Man isn't canonically blessed by a god, it does feel quite fitting. This gives us another skill proficiency, which is lovely. We are really good outside of combat at this point, which is something a lot of barbarians don't get the pleasure of being, even though I know we're a barbarian warlock. But we also get the Guidance cantrip, which is a nice thing to have to further boost our out of combat usefulness, and also a free spell, which we can cast once without a spell slot, and then we can use spell slots if we want to. I've gone for Divine Favour here. Divine Favour lets us, as a bonus action, bolster our attacks by 1d4. Doesn't require concentration, so this is something you could theoretically do on turn 2, or turn 1, most likely. So you'd want to do Divine Favour, attack normally, second turn, go into Rage, and then you can start, bashing things. Or you could just not use Rage. You're a bit more flexible with this kind of setup. There are a lot of really, really good feats here, though, from lessons of the first ones. Alert, Lucky, fantastic from the standard ones. Norn Touched is really good, as it lets you boost a d20 test by your proficiency bonus, or detract from someone else's d20 test by your proficiency bonus once per long rest. You can use both of those as well once per long rest, so that's pretty good. So you can pick your favourite there, but I really like the boost to out of combat utility, generally speaking, from Guidance. At Warlock 3, which is our level 8, we are going to take the Undead Patron, which sounds a little bit weird unless we're cribbing some of Skeletor's power, but hear me out. He does, yeah. By the power of Greyskull, I have the power. Grayskull, to me, is pretty undead coded. I know it's a castle, but I think we can kind of get away with this. And just because it is horror themed or horror coded doesn't mean we can't reflavor it as yet another stage to his transformation. I kind of like the idea of, on turn 1, using the abilities of the undead patron to transform into your form of dread. This gives you temp health yet again, 1d10 plus your warlock level, which might beat out the false life. If you find that you're using this more often than false life, then you could theoretically swap that one out for something else. Maybe another lesson to the first one, but I'm not going to bother doing that. You also get immunity to the frightened condition because you're just so heroic, and it can end the frightened condition when you transform. And when you hit a creature, you can potentially scare the creature, which I like to think is people being terrified of He-Man's raw power. You also get spells. We don't care about spells. Sorry, spells. You did your best. We do get second level spells though, and there is at least one here that's really, really good, which is Mirror Image. Mirror Image takes an action to cast, lasts for a minute, does not use concentration. What this means is that on turn 1, you can go Mirror Image, Form of Dread, and you can say, by the power of Grayskull, and then on turn 2, you can Rage, I have the power, and then start bashing things. You'll have a bunch of temp health, you'll have duplicates of yourself so you can barely get hit, and you'll have your cat to make you even tanky. You are very hard to defeat at this point. At level 9, we will be a Warlock 4, which means we get another feat. I've gone for Mage Slayer. Mage Slayer feels very, very fitting, given that Skeletor is a mage. Gives us a strength boost to 19, and it lets us make it much harder for creatures to maintain concentration. If you do want to go down the riding your battle cat into battle route, and I think there's a lot of good arguments for doing so, then it might be worth considering Mounted Combatant here instead, which lets you direct attacks to your mount instead of yourself, making you a lot tankier, and also gives you more advantage on medium or smaller creatures, which could mean that you're attacking less often with your reckless attack, which isn't a bad thing at all. If you are going to do that, I would recommend maybe stopping Warlock here and going for Barbarian from here on out. But for us, this is just the beginning of our Warlock abilities. We are going to level to Warlock 5 at level 10, which gives us 3rd level spells. You can pick your favourite. I recommend picking up Remove Curse though, because it feels incredibly fitting, and other utility spells, generally speaking. Although Armour of Agathis is still going to be a fantastic choice. This also gives us, and this is integral, some more Eldritch Invocations, and I am going to take Eldritch Smite. This lets us use our Pact Magic slots to deal 1d8 force damage plus the level of the spell, which at this point is 4d8, once per turn, and potentially knock a creature prone as well, as long as it's huge or smaller. That is pretty good, as it turns out, so that's nice. And it's not a spell despite it being a magical effect, which means we can use it when we're raging. As it just so happens, level 10, which is what we are now, is also our next damage check-in, and against enemies with an AC of 17, we are doing 42.05 damage on average now, which is a nice little jump from our level 5 check-in, and a respectable amount for a character which can take such a massive beating as well. It is at this point where I really had a decision to make about whether or not I was going to go Warlock or Barbarian or something else. I decided to stick with Warlock. While Barbarian can be good, you get frustratingly little as you level up as a Barbarian. You do get a boost to your rage damage at Barbarian level 9, which is ages away, but you don't get a 3rd attack, and we can get a 3rd attack with Warlock, along with better spells for our smites, and just better utility in general because of spells as well. So, level 11, we are going to go Warlock 6, which gives us the Grave Touched ability. This allows us to ignore resistance to necrotic damage with our attacks, Warlock spells, and Warlock features, which is not bad. We can also change a spell to necrotic damage if it deals something else, and when we hit a creature with an attack roll and deal necrotic damage, either through an Eldritch Smite or just using our Pact of the Blade feature, we can roll an extra damage dice, which makes our weapon a little bit better. In general, we also don't gain exhaustion levels from dehydration, malnutrition, or suffocation, and you don't need to sleep either, which is a really cool roleplay thing of just the pure heroism of He-Man, stopping him ever being stopped. Level 7, we get another Eldritch Invocation. Thirsting Blade is a good one here to get your extra attack. I think it's a requirement for the 3rd attack later on, but you can also just take Devil Sight for now and take that one later. 4th level spells for our Warlock 7 is just pick whatever you want, really. It does get trickier to find good spells at this point. Level 13 is Warlock 8 for us, and I am taking Focused Critical. ultimately, when you're attacking with advantage a lot, it does make it easier to crit, and with focused critical, it gives us, I believe, a 19% chance to crit, which is pretty tasty. It also lets us have a 20 in strength. As I said, if you've gone for the mounted combatant earlier, you might want to take something else here. There is another mounted feature from the Northlands book, which I believe gives you better jumps and a little bit of damage if you jump off your mount as you're running at someone, which is cool thematically, very superhero landing, so I do like that. But I've gone focus critical because I'm a simple man. Level 9, we get contract patron, so you can radio Grayskull as and when you need, which is not a bad thing at all. And it's also going to give us the life drinker identification. This lets us deal an extra 1d6 of necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage when we hit with our packed weapon, but only once per turn. And you can also expend a hit point die to regain health to equal to it, plus your con mod. We can use our barbarian hit point die here to regain a lot of health during combat. So that is very, very cool. We also get 5th level spells. Pick whatever you want. I quite like teleportation circle, although I don't think it's especially thematic. Level 15 is a level 10 warlock for us, where we get necrotic husk. This gives us resistance to necrotic damage, as well as immunity to necrotic damage when we're using a form of dread. And if we drop to 0 hit points, but don't die outright, we can cause our body to erupt with deathly energy, which you can reflavor as magical girl transformation energy, to potentially deal some damage to other creatures and then gain some health as well, which is fantastic. You can do that once per short or long rest, but you do gain an exhaustion level for doing so. But still, coming back from the dead, it's pretty heroic, if you ask me. Our damage at this point is up to 64.2. We're just missing out on the 3rd attack and a couple of other little boosts, but it's not the end of the world. Level 16 sees us being Warlock 11. I really like the Mystic Arcanum in theory, but I always find the choices to be a little bit underwhelming. However, Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron is a banger. You can make potions, like potions of healing, really easily. We're using this, and I think that's super cool. So, yeah. Yay, potions. You could 100% get some extra damage with some of these, but, you know, I'm not working that out. You can't make me legally. Level 17 sees us going up to Warlock 12, and I'm going to take a feat to boost our charisma to 16, as it's been 15 for the majority of the build. And I'm going to take Boisterous Roar. This is one where when we score a critical hit, we let out a roar. Allies within 5 feet of you gain resistance to all damage until the end of your turn, making you even tankier along with your battle cat. And enemies within 5 feet of you gain vulnerability to all damage until the end of your next turn. With us hitting multiple times, this makes it pretty likely that we do get a crit in at least once per turn, which is a massive damage boost. Plus, we get our final Eldritch Invocation here, which is Devouring Blade, which allows us to attack 3 times instead of once, as long as we are using our Pact of the Blade weapon, which is our sword, which we are, which is very tasty. We are currently level 17 with 5 levels in Barbarian and 12 levels in Warlock, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for a fighter dip. Look, fighters are really good. Action Surge is just too tasty for general damage calculations, and it's such a cool thing for heroic characters. You know, gritting your teeth, getting back up at the end of a turn and just going again. Feels so on theme for a character like He-Man, so you can't blame me for this. Level 1 Fighter, which is level 18 for us. We get a little bit more health because of the D10 damage die. We get a fighting style as well, and I've gone for Savagery, which I used last time. This allows us to, when we attack savagely, which basically reduces our AC by 2, but allows us to add our proficiency bonus to our melee weapon damage rolls. That is an extra 6 damage for each hit we're making, which is 3 now, and an extra 18 damage a turn is nothing to sniff at. You could 100% take something like defense if you wanted to, or even dueling, because wait, does dueling work without a shield? I can't remember, but I really like this one. We also get Second Wind, which gives us even more ways to regain hit points and keep ourselves healthy, making us therefore even sturdier, and 3 weapon masteries, which you can just take whatever you want. It doesn't matter at this point. We are locked in with a longsword. Level 19 is going to be Fighter 2 for us. We get Action Surge, which is the main reason we're here, which lets us once per long rest, short or long rest, sorry, short rest is wild. Allows us to take an additional action, which allows us to attack 3 more, which is good, as it turns out. Also allows us to add our Second Wind to our checks, making us even better outside of combat. We are so good outside of combat at this point, as well as so good in combat as well. And our final level, our capstone, we are going to take Fighter 3. There are arguments for all sorts of different subclasses here, but a He-Man is nothing if not a champion of good, so I've taken the champion subclass. Also, it means I don't have to do much more thinking. And what could be more He-Man than that? Truly. It gives us advantage on both initiative rolls and our athletics checks, which is lovely. Also means that if after we score a critical hit, we can move up to half our speed without provoking opportunity attacks. And to make those crits a little bit more consistent, we can crit on a 19 or 20, which stacks with focused critical, in my opinion. If it doesn't, change focused critical for something else. Check with your DM before doing this if you're going to play this build, which means that you could attack and crit on an 18 to 20, making our damage a lot better. So our final damage check-in at level 20 against an enemy AC of 21 brings us to 91.57 damage as standard. If we action surge, it goes up to 140.41, and if we have crit in the previous turn, which is pretty likely, it means that they have vulnerability, which means our average damage would be 280.82, which is nothing to sniff at. Not bad at all, He-Man. And on top of that, you have so many proficiencies. In fact, let me show you. I don't normally show these off. Acrobatics, animal handling, athletics with advantage, history, intimidation, nature, perception, persuasion, religion, and survival, all of which you can absolutely nail. So you're also sitting at 198 hit points in general. Our AC is awful, but that's just the way these things go. And you have so many ways to heal and get temp health, and you're riding a cat. And your He-Man. So that's that. You too can have the power of Grayskull and wear a bikini if you want to into battle, because why not? I hope that you enjoyed this build. I'm kind of having some fun with the building specific characters rather than just general builds. I'd hit a bit of a wall creatively, just doing how much damage can I do with X build instead of how cool and flavorful can I make X character. So if there are characters that you'd like me to build, let me know in the comments. I probably should have done this earlier in the video, but that just means that it's for you, the true Dungeon Himbo fans. I didn't even intro my name at the beginning. Oh, I'm so bad at this. That's fine. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you are doing well and continue to do well. I hope you have a wonderful week. We'll be doing a Blood Hunter dive on Thursday, assuming nothing else happens. But in the meantime, do take care and check out, let's go Venom and Spider-Man Noir, because those are both other character builds I've done. So we'll go for those two. And I will say goodbye now. Goodbye now.